Welcome back, everybody. It's the Uncensored CMO. Now, we're talking about one of my very favourite topics in this episode, challenger brands. And in this episode, we've got one of the best possible brands to talk about, Gymshark. They've absolutely revolutionised the fitness market in the UK. And they're one of the original influencer and social media creative brands. And in this episode, I'm joined by their Chief Brand Officer, Noel Mack, to give me the inside scoop on how they did it and why they are one of the world's best fitness brands and one of the most successful challengers. There's so much in this episode that you can learn from. I know you're going to absolutely love it. Here it is. Noel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's an honour to be here.
Well, it's also an honour to be. This is the first episode I've done ever where my guest has got their own podcast studio. That's pretty damn cool. So thank you for that.
I mean, it's not my podcast studio, to be clear. It's the Gymshark one. But yeah, interestingly, we don't really do any external podcasts in here either. This started as an internal comms tool.
Did it?
Yeah, because we were... all of a sudden we found ourselves going from a startup, and when you wanted to do like an all-company meeting, you grabbed all 80 to 120 people and went, right, everyone gather around, and we just talked. And then we had offices in Hong Kong, Mauritius and Denver, and we had whatever it was, 700 plus staff, and all of a sudden you can't do that, different time zones, whatever. So much like, regular marketing, meet customers where they are and all that kind of stuff, we could have done a company newsletter to announce it was Deborah from Accounts Payable's birthday, or do something a little bit more in tune with the sort of target demographic that we tend to employ, and they all listen to podcasts, and we create an internal Gymshark podcast. So we've got a private podcast that you have to have a @gymshark.com email address to access, and then wherever you are in the world, it downloads onto your phone. So whatever time zone you're in or whatever else, you can hear directly from Ben or any of the C-suite or directors or whatever else from around the world. So
that's fantastic. I don't think I've heard many companies doing that, but it makes a ton of sense because you can listen to podcasts on your commute, listen in the gym, listen on the run. It's a great way to absorb information while passively while doing something else.
On the train, if you're working in New York, if you're driving along in your car in Birmingham, whatever it is. And by the way, I cannot take the credit for it. I unashamedly stole it from our friends at Shopify. They did one. They have the Shopify internal podcast called Context, I think it's called, and it's the founder Toby and the president Harley talking about the early days and providing all the context of why they do things the way they do at the company. So,
well, talking about context, take us back to the beginning. I mean, I was reading up on Ben's background and how he started the business, that kind of thing. There's a little quote that I really love from him, which is saying, the gym was hugely intimidating for me. And he said, I learnt everything from YouTubers, like he talks about Scott Herman, and it taught him structure, consistency and hard work. And it just resonated with me because, approaching 50 as I am, I'm still intimidated by the gym. Do you know what I mean? I just think that is a really powerful insight. But take us back to the origin of why he set this business up in the first place.
It was very much scratching Ben's own itch and his friends that he was around at the time. I think this was business number 4 or 5 in the gym niche that the guys had tried to start. In fact, the name Gymshark was just a cheap domain name on GoDaddy that was like £3.50, and it didn't even sell It didn't even sell clothing at the time. They actually dropship supplements. They made a t-shirt or a vest or whatever it was, first bit of merch with the website name on, and that sold really well. So they sold a bit more and then a bit more, and then here we are today.
It's a cool name, isn't it? I mean, has it become cool, or do you think it was just he discovered this cool name?
Names of brands, I think it's a really weird dynamic. This my analogy I always use, because in my agency life before this, when we used to come up with brand names for people and they'd say, I don't like it. Here's the analogy I always gave them, right? If I said to you today that I was going to start rapping, right, and you said, right, okay, no, what's your rap name going to be, right? And I said Little Tantrum, you'd be like, that is the worst rap name I've ever heard, right? But Tiny Temper, which is the same name, I've just swapped the names out slightly, seems really legitimate to you, but it's because he made it legitimate, right? So like Gymshark on its own literally doesn't mean anything, right? Your brand name when you first start, it won't mean anything. But once you start brand marketing, you start to tell people what you stand for and that kind of stuff, you educate people on it, you wrap an emotional layer around it, and all of a sudden it becomes cool. But if I swapped out Gymshark for Yoga Fish, you'd be like, that's the worst name ever. But if somebody built a great brand called Yoga Fish, it would seem like a cool name.
Someone's just written that down, by the way. Wait till you see Yoga Fish. Put that down on the trademark. Same with straplines though, like just do it kind of thing, isn't it? Like I don't think that would have sounded quite as iconic as it does now when whoever came up with it, on day one.
You've done agency work. I'm sure you've been there where you suggest something and the client is no, I'm not sure, because they basically want one that they've already heard before, which is never going to work.
Now tell us how you met Ben, because you were working as you had your own agency, didn't you? And you were working for Gymshark. So how did the connection come? Why did you jump from one side to the other?
It's a bit of a mismatch and a really weird story where I got a DM from the Gymshark account. Now, bear in mind, I knew nothing about Gymshark. I knew nothing about the fitness industry. I got a DM from them, and when I clicked on to have a look at their content, it was all these American fitness influencers. So I assumed it was an American brand. Now, I'd been doing some work in LA or somewhere at the time, and the DM was like, hey, it was one of the girls that worked in marketing at the time. Hey, Noel, we love your work. We'd love to have a chat with you next time you're in the country. They assumed I was American because I'd been posting stuff that I'd been doing in America. I assumed they were. So I replied saying, great, when I'm next in the country, I'll let you know, right? Not realising that actually, not only were we both British, both sides of this conversation are also Brummies as well.
You're from Birmingham as well?
Yeah. So then we didn't talk for ages and ages. And then I think I'd posted something else. I don't know, I was in my local shopping centre or something, and I posted. And I got another DM being like, oh, you're here? And I was like, no, like what? And so anyway, we had this slightly confused conversation. Then it's like, you're in England, I'm in England. And then we realised that we're like 5 miles down the road from each other. So came and had a meeting at Gymshark. We did some work with Gymshark on a client basis. Went really well. It continued to do really well. And then, it kind of evolved into that. And then one day Ben rang me and said, how do you feel about coming on board? And I said no. And I think he mentioned it a couple more times. And I said no 2 or 3 times over the course of about a year. And then I was driving along in my car listening to Sheryl Sandberg on a podcast. For those who don't know, Sheryl Sandberg is incredibly impressive, and she's Mark Zuckerberg's right-hand woman. And someone asked her, what made you take the leap from big enterprise tech into this little startup called Facebook? And she said, I wasn't crazy about the job that Mark was offering me, but I thought to myself, if the rocket ship's taking off, don't worry about your seat, just get on it. So I'm driving along and I thought, oh no, is Gymshark my rocket ship? And it's about to take off without me. So literally there and then, Ben Francis called him. I said, do you still want me to come on board? He was like, yeah. So did a U-turn, went to the office, sorted it out, and that was it. And that was 8 years ago.
The rest is history. And it has been a rocket ship, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has, yeah.
How big was the business when you started?
I think the first year I got involved on the consultancy basis, I think was the year that they were going from 5 million in revenue or thereabouts to 12.8, something like that. And then, I can't remember how much longer after that I went from consulting to on board, but it was pretty small. In fact, my first meeting at Gymshark was in a porter cabin, which was in the car park of the warehouse where we kept the stock. So we ran our own warehouse, which was Ben's little brother Joe ran the warehouse, and then the office was a little porter cabin, and everyone was wearing like fingerless gloves because it was so cold in there, so they could still use their phone. And it looked like a bit of a ragtag operation. Do you know what I mean? So that was my first experience in Gymshark. Nothing like your experience coming here today and seeing all this.
The listeners won't be able to necessarily imagine where we are now, but this is a very, very impressive. I mean, you've got studios out there, you've got a really big, impressive gym downstairs, and this is just one of a number of buildings, isn't it, that you've got on this site in Solihull, which is very impressive. So come quite a long way.
Yeah, it has indeed.
So tell me about your role here as Chief Brand Officer. What does a Chief Brand Officer do? And is it different to a CMO?
I feel like a bit of a fraud on the Uncensored CMO podcast, but there wasn't an Uncensored Chief Brand Officer podcast, so we're going to have to make do. It is. I do class it as slightly different, to be honest with you. So I look after a plethora of different teams, but in terms of the ones that you'd consider more marketing, like the creative team, the organic social team, and the partnerships, so influencers, talent, celebrity, all that kind of stuff, teams as well. So we categorise them slightly differently. My incredible colleague Carly looks after some of the more traditional ROI based marketing channels, and we kind of split it like that. And when you think about Gymshark as a brand, sort of part of the value prop of Gymshark and what the brand is in its social following and its influencers and its talent as well. So while those things are marketing channels, they're also one of the reasons people step into the store and buy the shirt in the first place. Do you know what I mean? Like, with all due respect to people who do SEO, I've never bought a shirt because I thought their SEO strategy was really great. Do you know what I'm saying? But people do go in and buy into Gymshark because of the kind of stuff we post on social, because of the kind of influencers, because their favourite bodybuilder, their favourite boxer, whatever else it is, wears Gymshark. Do you know what I mean? So we categorise them slightly differently, but all the channels work, fully across the funnel. Carly, in her role as Chief Digital Officer, also has other stuff she reaches over and does into like the website and the digital experience and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of Venn diagram some of the more traditional marketing stuff in the middle, but it's always worked out really well for us. So.
Now I'm in danger of sounding really old at this point, right? Because so both my daughters are massive Gymshark fans, right? So they would totally get all this in terms of like, oh yeah, I saw this person on TikTok and they're wearing this and they're going to buy it and go down the gym, right? So I get it. But tell me how you approach influencers and the role they play and how does it build the brand. So talk me through the approach that you take to that kind of.
It's more akin to break it down into like the simplest possible language I can. It's more akin to signing for a football team, i.e. Jude Bellingham signing to Real Madrid, than it is a brand having a relationship with an influencer to sell a product. Does that make sense? Because the Gymshark athletes became this, like, we set them up very early as this like revered group of fitness influencers who are like the upper echelon of fitness influencers. Do you know what I mean? Like, you had to be a very particular kind of person to make it onto our roster. We also weren't a fan of just cookie cutter, same people with the same style. Do you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. We wanted like a diverse mix of people that bought things from different backgrounds. So we've got Francis Ngannou, the baddest man on the planet, who, you know, stomped his way through the UFC and then went on to beat up Tyson Fury in Saudi and all that crazy stuff, right? But then equally, we've got like your more traditional fitness influencer. We've got bodybuilders, we've got endurance athletes who run ultra marathons. Do you know what I mean? So everyone brings slightly different things to the table. Do you know what I mean? So while obviously they do the whole, hey, swipe up now, buy from Gymshark.com, the sort of lower the lower funnel stuff. It was like a badge of honor and a thing that we tried to set up and galvanize and make these people really revered in the industry, and even like the way operationally we set it up is closer to that. So, you know, I know a lot of other friends who do similar-ish roles to me who like pay for posts and all that kind of stuff. We don't really do that much. It's for us, it's like 1 to 3 year contracts, and it's a commitment, and then we'll work really, really closely with them. I've been at other businesses where there's 1 person to 100 influencers. Our talent managers here are managing like 8 to 10 max, and they have really, really great relationships with them. We took it from A&Rs in the music industry because that was like the kind of area I was working in before this, and I thought that worked really well, so took that. And honestly, we're probably the only brand I really know that do it like that as well. Everybody else does it very differently, but it's worked so far, so we'll stick
describe
with it.
The difference then between how you do it and how other people.
Well, again, I've got friends at other big sort of Shopify brands and all that kind of stuff who are literally, they'll reach out to talent and say, how much do you want for 10 posts? They'll pay them in advance for those 10 posts and say, I'll let you know when and what I want you to post, and then they'll just reach out to them over time, be like, right, I'm cashing in on one of the posts, post this top, say this at this time, thanks. Do you know what I mean? It's not the way we do things. If we're sponsoring this podcast, right, you know how to connect with the uncensored CMO audience better than anybody else. It's literally everything you do. So it would be remiss of me to tell you how to connect with your audience and say this about that black Gymshark t-shirt that you're wearing. If anything, I'm going to be like, right, you tell me what it is you need to say to make that connect with the audience best. Do you know what I mean? So it's quite
you're
different.
absolutely right. I mean, I've been approached a few times actually for sponsorship on the show, and every time I turn it down because it's like, it literally is a list of things. We want you to plug this, say this, mention that. I'm like, well, that's not authentic, because anyone listening is going to go see right through it. And it's just, I might as well just do an advert. I might just go, hi, this next 30 seconds is me telling you about this thing that's going to happen, right? If you want it authentically, let's co-create something together that's absolutely wonderful, adds value to the audience, and that everyone talks about, you know. And what role have they played in the growth of the business? I mean, how much of the success is down to that group of influencers?
Huge. If you and again, remember, the group's evolved a lot over time. Like the team, as with any great team, it evolves. People's lives move on. So some people, you know, have gone on to do other things. We're always onboarding new talent, but that the Gymshark athletes is such a synonymous term in the industry. Like, everybody knows it. Like, if you ask most people, I think, how do you know Gymshark? They'll either say social media, and sometimes even when they say social media, they mean influencers, or they'll quote, oh, she wears it or he wears it and I love them. Do you know what I mean? So they've been enormous for us. Like, honestly, we owe them the world. We understand that, you know, we've done a lot for them as well, I like to think. But when we opened our Regent Street store, me and Ben were there with them, giving our Gymshark athletes a tour of the store, and we said, like, this is your guys' culture. We brought it to Regent Street, but we learnt it from all of you. Going back to what you said about Ben watching Scott Herman videos when he was a kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, Ben wasn't a bodybuilder. I'm not a bodybuilder. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not from that world. We were fans of them. We were fans of our own athletes, and we took what they did and we put it on display for the world to see. And we've now opened stores around it. We've created products around it. We've created fitness apps around it. Do you know what I mean? But we're fans of the Gymshark athletes in the same way everybody else is.
That's pretty cool. And what role do they play in product development? Because presumably you're going to get a lot of feedback from this group as well, aren't you? Informing like what you're going to do next. And
it's cool that we have a real 360 degree relationship with them, where, you know, good and bad, we'll send them products and it was like, oh, we hate this, and you can tell when a talent doesn't like the product, because you can just tell in the kind of the way they talk about it, the posts. You don't see all that much, all that kind of stuff, but equally you can tell when they really love something, so you can figure out what to double down on. Do you know what I mean? Just this week we had one of our biggest female talent in the office, and she was there going through the whole next season saying, I love this, but you see the way you've done the flares on these seamless leggings, like when I wear Air Jordans, it means they catch on, and like your designer there writing it down. Do you know what I mean? So all these little human truths we figure out, and the great thing about that is not only are they giving you the insights, when you then nail that product and get it right for them, then they're also the marketing channel that get it out there, and they want to wear it and they want to sell it to their audience. Do you know what I mean? So if you can bring them along on that journey, it's incredible. One of our biggest males, David Lade, we actually made him the creative director for lifting at the brand. So he informs what our content looks like, the kind of products. He gets like super involved, and that's gone really, really well.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Now, you've kind of been famous for building a community, haven't you? Kind of and making that your focus.
Mm-hmm.
So the influencers, these are the people that bring the kind of community, the Gymshark community together, and then grow. So how important has the community been to you, the sort of broader, and how many of them are there in the? How do you reach?
Yeah, we don't really quantify that, if I'm honest. People have said that to me before, and we don't really count. I mean, you can count, our Instagram and our TikTok followers and all them together if you want, which we sort of call first degree of connection, 0 degrees of connection, how many customers we have. But then equally, like, I consider the followers of our athletes part of the Gymshark community as well, and then you're into the hundreds of millions. So it's really, I've never really quantified it, nor really found a need to quantify it. The kind of rule is, if you're willing to turn up and put the work in, then you're in. Do you know what I mean? You don't even really have to wear Gymshark. Like, if you like our content and you like our community, then you're in. You might come to our run club on Regent Street on a Tuesday. I don't really mind if you turn up in Under Armour or Nike, to be honest with you. Like, if you're willing to sweat, you're in. But the community's been huge. We didn't start off though with like hashtag community on LinkedIn has become like a real thing, right, in the past like 2 or 3 years. We never started off intending to build a community. If we go right back to the top, like I said earlier, the online fitness community was a thing long before Gymshark came along. In fact, Ben was on bodybuilding.com, on these forums, trailing through, looking for how to get bigger arms, right? And seeing some of these power users. If you think back to the world of forums, the influencers on forums were like the admins and the power users. Do you know what I mean? Some of the first fitness influencers were actually like the moderators of the forums before that, or the guys who would like be really, put loads of effort in. So Ben was just one of the community. He realised that he couldn't get the clothing that he wanted in the UK specifically. So he's like, well, I'll make it then. And Nan taught him to sew and all that kind of stuff. So then he's gone, hey, is anybody else interested in any of these products? Yeah, I'll take one. And then, one order's turned into 10, which turned into 100, and now we're sitting here today. So if anything, I kind of feel like what happened instead was there was a subculture and a community that no brand was really standing up and representing, right? When we started Gymshark, like, you had Nike over here doing sports, like elite 0.1% athletes that, super impressive, but it's not me, right? Equally over here, you had like gym brands that were like the huge, bald, scary guys, gym. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And in the middle, there was this new community emerging of like guys and girls who weren't that, but nor were they that. They were this thing in the middle that was like, I've got a normal job, but I like to go to the gym and stay in shape. And when I take my top off, I can look quite impressive. And no brands were really standing up and representing them. So the Gymshark community, I feel like we didn't build from the ground up. We adopted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were just the first brand that stood up and said, hey, you guys in the middle who are being a bit neglected right now, we represent you. And they just took to us like that. And it's been like that ever since. I think it's the same thing with the skateboarding brands, Stussy, Pata, so on and so forth. Skateboarding, when it wasn't being taken seriously, and it was because it wasn't really a sport and it was in between things. Obviously now you've got Nike SB and whatever else. But when that was really underrepresented, they were just the first brands that stood up and went, hey, we represent you. And thanks to them, we now have Supreme and Kith and all these other brands that have come from there, So, but it's been huge for us, absolutely huge.
I think you're so right. I mean, to have that clear position, I think is a real point of your success. I mean, if I go back to like the 80s when I was growing up, you kind of Gold's Gym, it was like weed of bodybuilding. I remember buying the bench and the kit, and it literally was, Schwarzenegger basically. It was kind of like, that was your role model. It was so, such an extreme niche and so, beyond most people's touch. And then you say you got like the sport brands which cover everything like Nike. So I can totally see how that's
the great thing about. Like now, when you go on YouTube, like in those days, you had to buy those bodybuilding magazines to try and get tips on how to grow your arms and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that I feel like I'm most proud of at Gymshark is we've been able to we sort of adopted them, and now we're like co-authoring gym culture as well. So we've been able to democratize some of that information. So where you'd see those images from Venice Beach, and you'd look, how the hell are they training? What are they taking? What supplements? What's a BCAA? I've never heard of it. Blah blah blah. Gymshark's been instrumental in helping demystify some of that stuff, bring influencers to the forefront, put them on and give people access to information. So now, like, you've got guys in the gym who are 19 years old who've been training like extremely well with the right movements in a healthy way since they were 14, 15. Do you know what I mean? So now you're seeing some of these kids come out at 19, massive in crazy shape, and you're thinking, well, look at the size of him.
Yeah.
But they've had access to this information on the internet thanks to the internet in general, and thanks to brands like us now that have been able to give them that information, keep them healthier, and just keep them really well informed. So yeah, I love all the imagery from those days, but I love how democratized fitness is these days versus back then.
I think you're spot on, aren't you? Because you there's a massive thirst for knowledge, isn't there, and sharing and following and that kind of thing. Just did not exist 20 years ago and beyond. It was like one magazine and that'd be it. Whereas actually I think that's a key part of your success is by making that knowledge available.
We talk about when you talk about like vision and mission, we talk about the fact that our mission is to create clothing, community, and content to help people realise how strong they can become. People might think that the Gymshark mission would be create great clothes, right? But it's not. It's clothing, community, and content. So like when you turn up here to work every day, no matter what you do, if you're in brand, if you're in marketing, if you're in finance, if you're in tech, whatever, in some way you're contributing to making clothing, community, and content so that people can become stronger.
Yeah, that's really clear. And another kind of challenger brand ethos I think that you guys have delivered is I've heard you talk about the fact that you didn't necessarily know what you were doing to begin with, which I know
still don't.
Sounds like a backhanded compliment that, but there's a lot in that. I mean, Adam Morgan talks about it in Eat Big Fish. He calls it intelligent naivety, but actually so many founders succeed because they come from outside the category, but they don't take on the kind of category conventions, the constraints and that kind of thing. So how much has that almost been a part of your success, is that you haven't just assumed what everyone else is doing is the way to do it?
Oh, for sure. He put it in a much more eloquent way than I could, but I've talked before about how nobody was ex Adidas, nobody was ex Under Armour, ex Reebok, anything like that. And in fact, if they had been, they probably would have never started this in the first place, because you'd have started off and been like, right, where's my media budget? And it was like, we haven't got one. Right, where's my creative budget? You haven't got one. Do you know what I mean? So, damn, this is impossible. Do you know what I mean? But sort of ignorant to those constraints or those ways of doing things, they say creativity comes when the restraints are applied, right? Totally. And that was it. It was like we need to find a way to get the product out there. We need to figure out a way to sell it. So we happened across this little known thing at the time called Shopify, and thought, well, let's whip one of them up, because JD Sports weren't going to answer the phone. We find these guys. No, we didn't have the money to go and sponsor LeBron. So it's like, well, who can we send it to? And it was like, well, there's these guys on YouTube that are teaching you how to get a big chest and big arms. We'll send it to them then, see what they think. Do you know what I mean? And that was quite literally the birth of influencer marketing. Like The Guardian did a piece on influencer marketing and the rise of it, and they said the earliest example they can find of a brand utilising influencer marketing was Birmingham-born Gymshark, and they talked about us in there. But at the time, you've got to remember, nobody had ever heard the word influencer before. Nobody had heard the word YouTuber. I remember being at the first expos where you had all the old school bodybuilders who'd won all the awards and done all that sort of stuff, right, sitting there signing autographs and taking photos and all that. And then the queue to meet some of our Gymshark athletes who had won 0 bodybuilding competitions were like 10 times theirs. And we had some of these guys and girls coming over and going, who's that?
Yeah, I want some of that.
Yeah, and like, why? Like, what have they won? And I was like, they haven't won anything.
Yeah.
And they were like, so why do they all want to meet them?
Yeah.
And I was like, they're a YouTuber. And he was like, what the hell is a YouTuber?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And obviously now Logan and KSI have taken over the world.
Yeah.
But it was a very, very different game back then.
Yeah,
very
you really led on that. As
yeah.
I was going to ask you what role Ben plays as the founder, because we were having a chat about this before off air, weren't we? And it's quite interesting because in my head, I'm thinking, well, he's the face of the brand, he's everywhere. But actually, what you were saying is that he really wasn't actually for many, many years. And what's the role that he plays in kind of the fame of the organisation?
So, well, first of all, I should say that this freaks people out, but the meeting before this, coming down to this room, was with Ben. He's in every single day, like working, full diary every single day. I think sometimes I've hired people in the past and they're like, what, Ben actually comes into the office? And then the one day I was like, yeah, he sits next to you. And there was like this girl that was a retoucher. She was like, oh my God.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as Ben came in and sat next to her and spent 8 hours a day sitting next to her. So he's in every day. Like it's a legitimate chief exec position. It's not one of these CEO for title, founder, but swans in and out. Yeah. Like he grafts. But yeah, in terms the thing on him being like the face of the business and all that stuff, it's very common these days, obviously, for people to do the whole building in public founder story thing on YouTube, and Ben's sort of held up as one of the the poster boys of that. But what people don't realise is Ben's first YouTube video was once we were already doing, I want to say 100 million in revenue, something along those lines, but the first time he ever told the story in any kind of way. And even that wasn't born out of some I want to be a famous internet person point of view. It was we'd done an event in Dublin, and this young dub lad came up to him and was like, I'm doing a college project on Gymshark, but I can't find out any information about it. Like, what have you never thought about doing a YouTube video? And I think on the flight home, Ben was like, maybe I should just tell people like how I did it and whatever else. He's quite introverted and shy. Made that video, and that's sitting at however many millions of views it's sitting at now, and it really took off. So again, just similar to Gymshark, it was more like, well, if the customers like it, let's just do more of it. And he kind of leaned in like that. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't come naturally to him. You won't see him doing get ready with me videos because he just wants the views. Do you know what I mean? It's not about that. It's like, well, if the customers want it, I'll do it, but I'm not doing it because I'm trying to be famous or anything like that. But he's honestly like one of the most humble. It's weird. I'm not really a believer in like stuff being meant to be and all that kind of stuff, but part of me thinks in some weird way he was meant to be as successful as he was because he can handle it really well. Do you know what I mean? We've seen people in the public limelight get really, really famous, and it derails their life and they become unhealthy and they get into all sorts of nefarious stuff that they probably later regret. There is zero chance of that ever happening with Ben Francis. I have to convince him to buy new shoes because he'll wear them until they've got holes in them.
He's always wearing the same thing in every photo.
Every single day.
He's always wearing his black
same
joggers,
Gymshark
black
outfit.
top, hoodie, and he turns up everywhere wearing pretty much that kit. All
Everywhere,
the time.
even Downing Street.
I love this story. Yeah, just for people listening, tell me about the day you met the Prime Minister, because this is brilliant.
He went like. The funny thing about this is Ben got an invite to Downing Street. Right, he turned up in his regular. Everybody else in the world would put their suit and their shirt on and all that kind of stuff. Ben rocked up in his exact same Gymshark outfit with his trousers tucked into his socks. I'm right in thinking I only found that out when I went round to see my nan, and she'd seen the photo online and was like, oh, I saw Ben didn't even get changed to go to Downing Street. And I was like, what? And I took her iPad off her, and there he was. And I texted him being like, tell me you didn't turn up in your Gymshark club. And he was like, yeah. But then the funny thing was, the next invite he got to Downing Street was the exact same format, bar there was a big bold sentence at the bottom, which is like, black ties required.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, the next time. Yeah, I think the second time he complied, but yeah, it was funny that I think they changed the Downing Street invite. He got a MBA.
MBA,
yeah. He met the future king.
Wow,
which is cool.
So, I mean, carrying on the theme in terms of Ben and personality, how does that? How would you describe the culture at Gymshark in terms of the what defines it?
It's such a tough question to quantify that. The thing I'd say is like everybody is so bought into the story, right? Everybody who works here either knows the story of this thing where this pizza boy made good, and now building this incredible brand. Or we're even part of the story from the early days, and they were there, and they know all the war stories and whatever else. But it's such a collective mission. Like every single person here is willing us over the line. Do you know what I mean? Like every single person, no matter what they contribute to the organisation. So that's probably the one most unifying thing. The great upshot of that is I think it kind of quashes a lot of politics as well. I was talking to a colleague a couple of days ago who's come from another big business, and I said, as a sort of percentage, the politics you had to deal with at the last place versus here, what was it like? And she said, well, if it was about 50% of the work at the last place, it's 2% here. Oh, because good. Everybody, like, if you have a disagreement with someone, generally it's not because I think you're being an idiot and I don't like your idea. You're doing what you think is right to get us over the line on this mission of growing the most iconic British brand ever, and I'm doing the same. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So we sort of test each other's ideas, but there's an understanding from both of us that we're both just willing Gymshark to succeed. We just think different things about how to get there. And as such, I think that really, really helps. Do you know what I mean? It also means that people are more emotionally tied to it as well, though. So you take problems home with you more, definitely, because you love it so much, right? I remember a customer saying this a while ago. One of us, I can't remember if it was me or Ben, got in touch with a customer personally on Black Friday because we'd let them down. And she said, and she was ranting and raving on Twitter and really angry at us about some cancelled order or something. So DM'd her on Twitter, called her personally and said, hey, like, I'm really sorry about that. And out of interest, like, why are you so upset? And she said, well, because I love Gymshark so much. She said, if Curry's cancelled my order for a microwave during Black Friday, I'd be like, whatever, it happens, like, it's Black Friday, it's chaos. She said, but when Gymshark let you down, it's like something you love has let you down. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same thing working here as well. People will take problems home and get stressed out about this job way more than others, because in other places they haven't been as committed to the cause and the mission and everything we're trying to achieve. So
that's so
it goes both ways.
You give me a random flashback to I subscribed to Jimmy's Iced Coffee randomly here, and I remember their customer service letting me down, and I had a right old rant on LinkedIn. I don't usually have rants on LinkedIn. It was very unlike me. I had a bit of a rant about it. You're absolutely right though. Like if it had been anybody else, I wouldn't have cared. But it's just because
it's weird, isn't it?
I'm a big fan and subscribe, and they let me down. So. But talking about those kind of challenges, how have you faced scaling up? Because like when you joined, you were talking about like 25 employees at the time. You're now 800-900. So what have been the challenges as because you've grown ridiculously quickly over the last kind of 5 or 10 years? So what have been the challenges that rapid growth has brought you?
I think being big and thinking small has been something we've really tried to hold on to, i.e. still being as agile. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you saw the other day, one of my teams, they're phenomenal, the Organic Social team, the 24 hours after the Met Gala, they recreated all the iconic looks and they called it the Sweat Gala and posted that online. And the speed at which they did that was ridiculous, right? Like the Taylor Swift Eras tour is coming up in London this week, and they've done all these like Taylor Swift inspired looks and stuff like that. So that's been tough, holding on to that, that startup agility whilst being.
How do you do that? Do you like delegate responsibility to them to make decisions, right? Because you could be a bottleneck in that situation if you have to sign everything off, let's say. So how do you make that happen?
I'm definitely not that guy. I think it's fun when people ask me that question. It's funny because I feel like they're asking because they've faced that issue in the past. I've never really felt like I faced it. I think it's because from the second this brand was the inception of this brand, there's been phenomenal ideas from 19, 20, 21-year-olds with zero technical experience all the way along. So now when a social intern strolls up to me and says, "Noel, I've got this thing I want to do," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, that sounds great. Get after it." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas in so many other companies, there'd be all these rounds of sign off and whatever else.
Yeah,
whatever it is. Yeah, and just red tape and stuff. I think we just have a history of doing that, so it's kind of inbuilt in us. And like I say, I'm calling out the problem. I want to be big and think small. So when you're telling people that and that repetition of message, they kind of realise they have license to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone sent me an email today, one of the guys in the creative team, who's like, "I know I'm stepping way out of line emailing you this because I haven't spoken to my line manager or their line manager or theirs, and then that's you.
Yeah.
But I just feel passionate about this idea. Here it is. I'm going to hit send and then run away. If you think it's cool, let me know. If not, forget I ever sent it." Do you know what I mean? A wicked email. I loved it.
That.
Yeah, it's
That's
so cool.
good.
So cool.
You want to hear that, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
You don't want to be shielded from what people really think, do you?
But a lot of people say they want to hear it, but then I think the reality of it can be different at times. Do you know what I mean? But it's like I said, it's been fundamental to our success. So why would you
encourage that? I mean, how do you get
100%.
people into a place where they feel like they can
I hit
ask you
reply straight away. I went back to him and said something like, let's read out my reply.
Let's do this.
Just so I can prove I'm not full of hot air. "Don't worry, nobody will ever be chastised for being passionate for the brand. I'll have a chat with Carly and catch up with you around the place and catch up. Thanks for your honesty and thoughts." And then Carly, actually, Did You Love Us, came back and said, "Echo that. Thanks for sharing. Chat soon."
Yeah.
So and now me and Carly will have a legitimate conversation about that, and it probably come to something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, you encourage it. Yeah, I don't know, but keep it front and centre and make sure we know that it is a risk that we could lose it, so we need to hold on to it.
Yeah.
The other one, the challenger scale, I think is like a more personal one. Is somebody said to me a while ago, who'd been here for a long time, they've been here for like 7 years, they said, "Noel, I've had the same job for 7 years," and they were a head of department. And I was like, no, you have the same job title, because when you started as that head of department, we were doing 15 million in revenue, right? We're now 600 plus. Like, your job is so different now.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, like, if the company's growing at X rate, just to stay in the same seat, you've got to match that growth rate as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To get promoted, you've got to outpace the company's growth, which is wild. Do you know what I mean?
Wild.
So, like, again, for me personally, like, making sure I'm still the right chief brand officer for this business and never resting on my laurels and just assuming that I'll be in the seat forever. Do you know what I mean? And making sure that I'm still as hungry as I was, still working as hard, still passionate about, hanging out on. It would have been all well and good for me to have had some success in the early days and Facebook and Instagram, but to make sure that I'm on TikTok and understanding what's going on there. Do you know what I mean? So
you just put a visual in my head, actually, like growing ahead of the curve. You almost need this curve ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
You need to be growing, learning, absorbing, improving ahead of the curve to drag the curve up, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really powerful. What are the biggest challenges you faced in this time of rapid growth? Because it's not easy, right? I mean, everyone looks, it must be great to be on this rocket ship and the success has been, but success is hard won, isn't it? And there are times where it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
What are the times where it hasn't gone well?
I think the times where we haven't gone well are the times where we haven't trusted our gut enough. We've taken, kind of back to our point earlier in the quote from your guy Adam, we've taken advice on, here's how everybody else does it, and we've thought, we better do it that way then. Do you know what I mean? And that hasn't generally panned out for us. I feel as that one of the biggest challenges about Gymshark, in my tenure anyway, has been ensuring I'm as conscious about what we don't do as I am about what we do. So, for example, it feels like we've got this, if you ever try and start a fire in the woods, it feels like we've got this little flame going and I've got my hands around it like this, and everyone is willing to tell me, here's what you should do next, right?
Yeah.
I go over to my partner's family in Wales and they're like, you know what you should get into, Noel? Equestrian, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then somebody else, I go down my local volleyball centre. All the girls are wearing it. You guys should get into volleyball, right? Everyone's got suggested into, here's what you should do next, right? And I feel like we've got this little flame, I've got my hands around it like this, and I want to grow it into a roaring fire. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But you have to be so protective. And probably the moments where it's gone wrong for us is when we've allowed anybody to input into that. Do you know what I mean? Like, the Gymshark brand is so cool. It's so individual. Tell me somebody else that's bought the gym to Regent Street or to any kind of shopping street, Champs-Élysées, Fifth Avenue, anything like that. They haven't, right? People have bought sports. North Face have bought mountaineering. Lululemon have bought yoga. Nobody has taken the gym out of the grotty back streets and the sweaty whatever and put it in some of the most iconic places in the world. But we have. Do you know what I mean?
That's a great description. That. Yeah. Yes, it really resonates with me, that, because I know whenever I've like worked on a challenger brand that's been successful, it starts off amazing, right? Everyone is focused. You're going in the same direction. You really care about the execution and the detail and the products and the placement, where it is and how it turns up, and then you start proliferating with innovation. Then you're managing a portfolio. Then you've got people doing different bits, and then suddenly you realise that you were focusing out. And now all you're doing is focusing in. You're just looking at, how do we manage this? And should we put a policy in for that? And should we get someone expert over here? And then suddenly you realise that you're just managing complexity. You're not managing execution, just managing the complexity. That's the danger. Is that, like, how do you protect that flame, as you said? Because I think you've touched on one of the secrets of having a scale up is make the one thing, or keep the one. What's the phrase? Keep the one thing the main thing, or something. There's some phrase somewhere.
I don't know. I haven't heard it.
Yeah,
but
we'll make it up on the spot.
One of the ways that I've found of doing that is like ensuring that I'm close to the consumers as well. So like, I'll drop into the Gymshark Run Club on a Tuesday at Regent Street and run along with them and talk to them, and I'll hang out in the Facebook groups and see what their problems are and all that kind of stuff. Like, we do this fitness challenge called Gymshark 66 every year, and I do it myself because I think, like, if I'm consuming the brand the way the customer does, then like I feel like I'm in their shoes. Do you know what I mean? And it helps me so much to stay close to them. Because to your point, it's very easy to turn around and 6 months down the road you realise I haven't spoke to a customer in 6 months. All I've talked about is process and budget planning and all this other stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I find a healthy mix of doing those things with also staying as close as you possibly can to the consumer really helps there.
I'm going to go for chart number 2 now, because I just realised the second chart, right? There is such a close correlation between the amount of time you spend with your customer and your success. And literally in my career, I could plot it out. Right?
Really?
Yeah. So when I'm all my possible time is spent with the customer, listening, getting feedback, but being in their shoes, I've aced it. The moment my customers become internal, and I've been trying to impress the board, or look good in front of me in the meeting or whatever. Suddenly your powers dissipate, because suddenly you're just trying to organise yourself. Whereas when you're with your customer, you know the answer to what the next product should be, or the next innovation should be, or how to improve it. Yeah.
There you go. Stay in your customer's shoes, man.
Stay close to your customer. Well, talking of going to market, you talked about your store in Regent Street, right? But you launched that store during COVID, didn't you?
Yeah, man.
And that's pretty wild, right? But I guess you were born in direct to consumer, but by constraint, really, because that was the only way you could get a product to. So tell us about building a direct to consumer model, and then why you then decided...
Well, it was still technically direct to consumer, remember, because it was our store on Regent Street. It was just direct to consumer retail, not direct to consumer e-com. Do you know what I mean?
Of course,
but it was still a huge task, because anybody who knows anything about the operations of an e-com business it's so different. I think if you've never worked in e-com or like at a retailer, you might assume, well, it can't be that different to go from selling it on the website to selling it in store. Trust me, I've got the battle scars. Yes, it is. So we have this real gut sense of like zig when others zag, and COVID happened. Our revenue jumped through the roof without any real input from us. It just did because it happened for everybody in e-commerce. Go and look at the results Shopify were posting. Everybody was aware of it. And there was all this talk about the death of the high street, bricks and mortar's dead. You must have heard this, right? Everyone, there was this one line that kept getting repeated that was like, the adoption of e-commerce has just leapt forward 10 years, right? It's never going back. Death of the high street, all this kind of stuff. So me and Ben actually are big fans of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, right? Berkshire Hathaway. And they talk a lot about like, what was it? Be scared when others are brave. Be brave when others are scared.
Yes.
Buy the blood when it's in the streets, all that kind of stuff. Well, all of a sudden, like, everybody was bailing from their leases, right? And we'd been talking about when it was right to get into retail. And we were thinking about a little 3,000 square foot box in Shoreditch, test and learn, prove it out, and then slowly over time maybe work towards a flagship. But then COVID happens, the blood's in the streets when it comes to leases, right? And Ben texts me, I swear to God this is a true story. Ben texts me saying, just a random during the day, texts me, do me a favour. Now when someone normally texts me saying, do me a favour, I think they want a cup of sugar, right? And he texts me, do me a favour. I said, yeah, what's up? He texts back saying, skip all the test and learn. Let's do flagship straight away. So I'm like, what? So I ring him. What are you talking about? He's like, think about it, man. He's like, it's never going to be cheaper than it is right now. He was like, there's going to be some incredible, do you know what I mean? Like locations available. We should buy the blood on the streets, you know, Warren Buffett style. So that was that. We went down to Regent Street, met with the Crown, had a look around. You know, we have this pride in being a British brand. We want to become an iconic British brand. And when I stood on that corner on our Regent Street store and looked, and you've got like, the arch of Regent Street going down, I remember thinking, if we're going to become an iconic British brand, there's only one street we can do it on. Do you know what I mean? So I brought Ben back down about a week later. I put him in that same spot and I whispered iconic British brand in his ear, and he's like, we'll take it. So that was it. And then like we then had to quickly figure out how to run a store, because we didn't have a clue, because we'd never done one before. So to go from having never done a single store to doing a 17,500 square foot flagship on Regent Street, it was quite the struggle. But going back to your point on growth and figuring it out and being big but thinking small, do you know what I mean? That lines up to all those decisions.
The thing I love about that store, I mean, but basically, if anyone listening, it is right in the middle. It's literally halfway down Regent Street, right? It's not tucked away in the back street. No. It's on Regent Street, 2 floors as well. Yeah. But there's a gym and a studio, which I know sounds obvious, but you know, you've kitted it out for people to go and work out in as well. So it's not just where you can buy clothing.
And so even there's a funny anecdote about that. Myself and Mitch, who's our retail and events director, we found the agency we wanted to actually do the store design for us. So we were getting into it, and I was sitting with Ben, and we were talking about what it could look like and all this kind of stuff. And Ben went to me, what I want is a gym, and if there's room, we'll sell some clothes in there, right? Yeah. And we laughed, and it was a silly thing, whatever else. But then got to thinking about it and said, actually, there might be something we can do here. So yeah, the point you're making is, we're smack in the middle of Regent Street, which is, for those who don't know, it's the British equivalent of the Champs-Élysées or Fifth Avenue. All the product sits on bars, which are actually barbells, and they have lifting straps up to the ceiling. You can press a button in the store. All the product goes into the eaves of the store, and it's gym flooring, and we have dumbbells and squat racks. We can pull everything out and do full workouts in there. So when you think about out-of-home media for a second, right? Down the street at all the billboards are at Piccadilly. Yeah. Think what a billboard would cost you there, right, for your digital assets and all that kind of stuff. What, 500-800 meters up the street, we have all those windows, and you at any given point you can have 250 to 300 people all training in there, big Gymshark over the door. Do you know what I mean? It's like the best billboard ever.
I think this is what people forget about retail, is it is media. Literally, retail is media, isn't it, in terms of the thousands of people that walk past every single day. And it's a bit like Apple stores, isn't it? Like Apple stores are literally Apple's main source of media. And also, community engagement as well. Yeah, it's kind of got a similar feel to that, actually.
Well, it was. I'm not going to lie, it was heavily inspired by Apple. Apple realised right at the start that one of the barriers to entry for the Apple brand was they were so invested in Windows, and they knew how to use a Windows computer, that Apple was an intimidating prospect. So they built the Genius Bar, and they teach people how to use their product, right? So go back to what you said about Ben right at the start. Yeah. The gym is an intimidating place. Totally. If you don't know how to use a squat rack, it's one of the most intimidating pieces of equipment in the gym. So there's a reason in our Regent Street store you can go in, book in with one of our pros. They'll teach you how to squat, bench, deadlift, how to stay safe when you're doing compound lifts. Same as Apple, the idea being if we can get more people into the gym, people will adopt Gymshark, and when the tide comes in, all ships rise, you know.
I think that's your killer insight. I definitely do. I think it really stems from that, doesn't it? So you've done Regent Street. Where's next? Where else are you going to go?
Stratford Westfield is opening in about 6 weeks now. So that'll be our second store concept. We've just entered into wholesale for the first time as well. So we're in Selfridges now with our sort of upmarket athleisure collection, which is really cool. I have a plan mapped out for 3 years, city by city, country by country. That's in my back pocket. I can't tell you about it yet. I would love to, but just know, it's coming.
Love it. Very, very exciting. Now, talking about Ben and you making the decision on going for it on Regent Street and just going all in, what's he like to work for? Because, I mean, like, you know, one of the most successful, isn't he the youngest billionaire, I think?
Youngest self-made billionaire.
Youngest self-made billionaire, youngest self-made billionaire, which is an incredible achievement. What's he like to work for?
Even you saying that at the end, it's really funny because I think he has to remind himself of some of those facts at times. I'm always reminding him of those. Like I said, when he's wearing the same pair of shoes for like the 8th month in a row and they've got holes in and all that. You wouldn't know it at all. Like the amount of times where we'll be on a train to London, a packed train to London, there's no seats, so we're just standing up, and somebody will look at him and be like, "Are you Ben Francis?" And he's like, "Yeah." And they're like, "What? I kind of didn't expect to see you on the rammed train in economy class on the way to London." Do you know what I mean? But that's just so Ben. He wouldn't have it any other way. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not. I remember somebody suggested a few years back he should probably get security or something like that, and he was like, nope, I'm not doing that. Somebody at an event in America, that was organising an event in America, just took the initiative on themselves and hired a security guard to follow him around, and Ben spent the day being like, stop following me. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, because he didn't want it. So he's like, I'd never say this to his face, but he's incredibly humble and great to work with. I think there's no way, to the point earlier, I've never been in a corporate position until this. I wouldn't have lasted this long if it wasn't for the great relationship I have with Ben. Do you know what I mean? He is like incredibly humble, challenging at times for sure as well. He knows what he wants, and any founder-led business comes with its challenges. But incredibly fair. Like I said, I kind of feel like he was destined to be successful in one way, shape, or form. Do you know what I mean?
How do you define his leadership style? Because you don't get to that position without being very clear on what you want to do and how you want to do it.
I suppose it's quite visionary. He's very clear in his head on what he wants this to be. Do you know what I mean? So then my job, the way I see it, is like I'm translating that. Do you know what I mean? I think one of the reasons me and him have got along so well together is because I can sort of talk Ben, as it were. Do you know what I mean? People will often come up to me and be like, can you help me get this over the line with him? Do you know what I mean? Because I can understand what he wants and I can figure out how to translate that. And I think a lot of people, like in our product design team, you got our head of women's wear design, Lois, who's been with us for years. I think she's got that skill as well. I think she can talk Ben, so that's why they work really well together for such a long time. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a key thing. So very visionary, and then he's extremely autonomous as well. So he'll leave you to do whatever it is you need to do, as long as the end result is right for the business, right for the brand. Then he's great, and super open to being challenged as well. Like the amount of times where I said to him, you've got to do it like this, and he's like, no, I'm not doing that, I completely disagree, and I've managed to convince him, and then it may have gone the way I said it should go, and he's more than willing to fall on his sword and go, God, you were so right, I was so wrong about that.
What happens in the reverse that situation?
I think even in those times when he can see that he was born, like the logic made sense, then it seems to work out as well. Do you know what I mean? Like he's often been like, could we have done that better? Yeah, probably, but whatever. Now when he says could we have done that better, what he meant was me. It was me that made the decision, right? But he'll take it as a we, which I think is...
That's really good.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's quite emblematic of...
I love that.
Yeah.
Best boss I've ever had have had that, where even if you fail, it's a collective responsibility.
Yeah,
they're not
for
going to
sure.
throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
That's really, really powerful. Love to keep talking, and unfortunately we're running out of time, but I'd love to get your career advice for anyone listening as well, because you've had an amazing trajectory. What would be the most important thing you've learnt in your career so far?
I was speaking to a very well-paid friend the other day, extremely well-paid friend, who was telling me that on Sunday night, he started seeing a therapist recently, and I was like, is everything okay? Like, anything I can do and all that kind of stuff. He said, it's just Sunday nights, man. He was like, Sunday nights, I get depression and anxiety, and I can't stand the idea of going to work Monday morning. And in that moment, I thought, wow, I'm so privileged to do something that I absolutely love. Do you know what I mean? And I think people think the thing that they love won't lead them to sort of like the financial success or the job title or whatever else they want. I argue that it definitely can. It's panned out for me. But also, as you get older, you realise that success isn't job title and salary anyway. Success is good relationship with your partner, with your kids, with health and fitness, and like stuff like job title and salary and all that kind of stuff. It's just a very small slice of a much bigger pie. But when you're young and naive like I was, you think it's just really simple. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose it's really cliche, but do what you love. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure when KSI got into gaming and showing and streaming on YouTube and all that kind of stuff, he didn't think that he could do what he's doing now. Do you know what I mean? Stands to reason, if you love something enough, there will be others out there who love it the same amount as you do. So keep doing it, and I think the passion comes through, and eventually success will figure itself out.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Just to build on that, actually, the other thing I think I've learned as I got older is just surround yourself with people you want to work with. A bit like do what you love, but do what you love with the people that you love as well. Yeah. Because like that's a multiplier, and people that are not aligned to your values and direction, all that kind of thing, it just drags on.
Yeah,
you know
100%.
what I mean? So surround yourself with the kind of the same people. I mean, similar to you, actually, I was kind of feeling a bit stressed earlier this week because the amount of events we've got on at the moment is just like insane. I was thinking, how on earth can I feel like I can't cope. And I kind of checked myself and went, I've got to be really grateful. Like, very few people in the world get to do what I do and have the opportunities to meet the people and go and do the things. Like, just enjoy it. You know what I mean? Because you can spend so much time going, oh no, I've got to do this, got to do that. But take the time out to enjoy the journey.
When you zoom out like that and look at the 10-year chart versus the one day that you're looking at, do you know what I mean? You realise how ridiculously privileged you are.
I know, exactly. And even me versus 3 months ago, I look at the progress going, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm doing today what I didn't even think 3 months ago I was going to be doing. So, But you can lose that, can't you, in all the what you got to get done. So.
And now you're in Birmingham, so you've made it.
Mate, I have. I know, this is good. You know, I'm loving being in this podcast studio, by the way. So
good, man. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
We're gonna recreate, I think, this in this in London.
Love it.
That's gonna be the next thing. Listen, Matt, I've really loved this. Thank you so much.
Likewise, really enjoyable.
Massive success to you as well. I love what you're doing, and there's so much in what you said that I know a lot of people are going to get a lot from. So
thanks, man. Cheers, John. Cheers,
good
fellas.
Thank you very much for listening or watching Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching, hit subscribe there as well. I'd also love to get a review. Reviews make a big difference on other people discovering the show. So please do leave a review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to contact me, you can do. I'm over on X at UncensoredCMO or on LinkedIn where I'm under my own name, John Evans. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.